Hi, my name is Hexel Colorado, and on behalf of Humanity for Texas, I encourage you to vote for Donna Imam for the U.S. House Democratic primary. Donna is running to represent Texas District 31. This includes Bell County and Williamson County. Check this map right here to see if you live in her district, or go to this website to look up your address and see if she could be your representative. Wherever you are in the state of Texas or even around the country, please phone bank for Donna today. There is only a limited amount of time left. Early voting is between now and July 10th, and election day is July 14th, which is, as of this video, next Tuesday. So we have a limited time left, and we need everybody to be making phone calls. You can volunteer for her campaign at votefordonna.com and clicking volunteer and providing your information. I had an opportunity to sit down with Donna for a one-on-one conversation about herself, her policies, and her campaign. If you want to learn more about her, please check it out, and please share with your friends and family to encourage them to vote and support Donna for Congress. So let's dive right into what I'd like to do is to cover three main things. First,
Okay.
The easy stuff. Want to get to know you, your background, your history with Texas. I know on the brochures it said that you've been living in the district for, I think, 14 years.
Yep.
Was that the right number?
Yeah.
And I'd like for you to talk a little bit about your nonprofit, so that that's always been a big talking point when back in the Young 2020 days was talking about that education nonprofit. So that's the first segment, and then I'd like to transition from there to just really bullet points on your top three policy issues, or at least I'd like to cover UBI and ranked choice voting, because UBI is obviously a big thing for us. Ranked choice voting is something we're actively working on right now, and then I'm going to let you call the shot on the third one. And I'm going to guess, based on what I've seen on your social media, it's probably healthcare. But if there's something else you wanted to highlight, then by all means. And then I wanted to end it with some questions about the campaign. What are your challenges right now, and what are you looking forward to once you're in office? So those kind of campaign, post-election life cycle questions.
Okay.
So with that, I'm gonna get started. So Donna, you are running for TX31, which covers Williamson and Bell County. And according to your website, you've been a native of the resident. Well, sorry. According to your website, you've been a resident of the district for 14 years. Is that right? So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came? What's your history with Texas and with District 31?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, first of all, for getting in touch with me. First of all, I am super, super pumped to have Texas Humanity Forward with our campaign. This is a huge news for us. We need your support, and we're super excited. So to tell you a little bit about me, my name is Donna Imam, and as Hexel pointed out, I'm running for U.S. Congress in Williamson and Bell counties. And to give you a little bit of lay of the land, Williamson County starts in northwest Austin and has all the northwest suburbs of Austin. So Round Rock, Cedar Park, Leander, and then Georgetown, Liberty Hill. And you keep going north into Bell County. And Bell County is Killeen, Harker Heights, Nolanville, Belton, and Temple. And Killeen is home to the largest armored vehicle military base in the entire country. So we have more veterans per square mile in our district than anywhere else in Texas. Now, I've been living in the district for over 14 years. And my background is that I'm an electrical and computer engineer, right? I started out my career as the first female design engineer ever hired in the 100-year history of Duncan Metering. And one of the reasons that I'm running for Congress is this is what happened really early on in my career. I used to work in research and development, and we had assembly on the first floor of our company. And every single manufacturing and assembly worker in my company was laid off. Their jobs were moved to Mexico. Many of them never worked a single day again. And none of them had any job retraining options to be able to create a career. So for the rest of my career, what I did is I focused on helping people get good jobs, being able to write their resumes, to put up a LinkedIn profile of themselves, and help mentor young women and people young in their careers to be successful in their careers. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I joined a nonprofit. And that nonprofit was struggling at the time because they had financial challenges. So I raised, along with our team, that we came together, we raised tens of thousands of dollars. We grew the nonprofit to a 4,000 member nonprofit. It is international now, and Austin has one of the biggest divisions of that nonprofit that we run. And this nonprofit provides free training and education to anybody who wants it. And as I worked in this nonprofit, I got to see firsthand the challenges that working Texans face. And I'll give you an example. In 2008, 2009, Austin had the lowest unemployment rate in the entire country during the recession. Yet we had many, many people that were highly educated that were out of a job, not for months, but for years. And sure, they paid their COBRA payments for healthcare for a month or two, maybe 3, but at some point they were unable to take care of their family's basic needs, such as being able to go see a doctor when you get sick. And these are the challenges that middle class and upper middle class even families, as well as the bottom half of the United States face. A lot of people have this notion that the only people that actually suffer from not having healthcare are people in low income, and that's not true. Almost every single person, even 6-figure salary person who lives in Williamson County, which is considered affluent, has experienced a layoff in their lives. And if you have a family of 4 with 2 children, it is extremely difficult to come up with $1,500 to $2,000 of premiums every single month, which is higher or double a mortgage for many people in this country, to be able to cover the basic need to be able to get healthcare. So these are challenges that not just impact the bottom half of the United States, but also people who have great jobs. And one thing about Williamson County I want you guys to know is that even though it's affluent because we have Dell Technologies, we have Amazon, Apple, and these big tech companies up here, for every single person that has a 6-figure job, there are 3 people that are struggling to put food on the table and be able to pay their rent. And that is what our campaign is all about. That is why I am running for Congress, because I realize that nonprofits cannot solve these systemic challenges that our economy has, that just does not cater and doesn't help the average working family. And that's what our campaign is all about. And that's why I'm running for Congress, Hexel.
Fantastic. Something I appreciate about your answer is that what you described sounds like you've thought about the demographics and the makeup of your counties in particular, as opposed to just any county in Texas or anywhere in the country. And one of the things I've read consistently looking at the endorsements on your page, including from State Rep Terry Meza and also Alice Yee from Austin, is there's a recurring theme of representation. A lot of people are commending you for your representation, especially of underserved communities. And so what I'd like to ask you is, what does representation as a public official mean to you? So how do you bring that representation to Congress, especially if they've not been represented before?
Yeah, and that is a great question. One of the things that people don't realize a lot of times is that, you know, our country has a huge population that has not had a voice in politics at all. So I'll tell you a little, I talked a little bit about Williamson County, but I'll talk a little bit about Bell County. So as you go north of Austin, you hit Bell County. And Bell County, what people don't realize is majority Black Americans, Hispanic, Latino Americans, and Asian Americans. And what a lot of people are just waking up to find out is that the population growth in terms of percentage of Asian Americans is extremely fast in Texas. This is the fastest growing population segment. And then you have the Latino Hispanic segment. And most of these communities have never been asked for their vote. No one's ever gone to their door and asked them, hey, what are the challenges you're facing? Did you know that you have a choice in representation? And in the primary on March 3rd, Super Tuesday, the reason that our campaign won Bell County, which by the way, I just want to take a little segue here. Texas's 31st district is one of the most competitive districts in the entire country. It's just 2.9% from flipping blue. That's number one. That's just 8,000 votes. Since 2018, we had more than 50,000 people move into just one of two of the counties, and Bell County has grown in leaps and bounds. So this is a county that is on the verge of new representation. That's number one. Number two, we realized that there are thousands of people in this district that are registered voters but are not voting. And I'll give you an example. In Bell County alone, we have 20,000 women who are registered voters that have never voted. Can you imagine? No one has ever gone to their door and say, hey, do you know you have a choice in representation? Do you know that there's someone running that is representing the challenges that you are facing on a day-to-day basis? And that's what our campaign is all about, giving voice to people who have never been part of the political process. Representation is about making sure that we bring everybody in our country together. Government has to work for every single person. And right at this moment in our country where we seem to be, and we are extremely divided, right? Not just when it comes to, our justice system, but also economically divided. It is important for someone to come in and say, you know what? These challenges that we're talking about, they don't just pertain to a small segment of our country. They pertain to 90% of Americans. We're talking about 90% of Americans really challenged about their children's future. So if you have a kid, and even if you're a middle-class family, and let's say your family makes over $75,000 a year, most families in our country, including our district, get $0 of assistance for education, for higher education for their children, whether that be trade school after high school, or whether that be 2-year college or 4-year college. They get nothing. College is like getting a mortgage out for your children to be able to have the skills they need to be able to be successful. So these are the things that are important to our campaign to represent. And one of the things that our campaign from the very beginning has been focused on is we want to be the biggest, the loudest voice in Congress for people who work for a living. Because, and there's a reason why, because every single penny of wealth that our country creates is created by people who get up in the morning that work 40, 50, 60, 70 hours. They are the ones creating wealth in our country, and they need to be represented. And that's what our campaign is trying to do.
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much for articulating that, because I love that you are explaining the specific scenarios like you gave, like even if you're making above 70,000, like what is life like for you and how much are you working? So I'd like to move next to questions about that some people may have about what your stances are in certain things. Now, for those of you listening at home or wherever you are, you can visit her website, votefordonna.com, and you can see her story. You can see where she stands on the issues. I'd like to ask about an obvious one, at least an obvious one for our group, which is universal basic income, a regular interval payment for every American unconditionally. And I wanted to know, what is your stance on universal basic income? How have you come to, how have you come to the stance that you have on it now?
So I have been a huge advocate of UBI for a very, very long time. In fact, there is a photograph of me and Andrew Yang in very early 2019.
Yes, I think I'm going to edit that in, put it right here.
And so the interesting thing is Andrew came to Austin in very early 2019, and I had to go meet him. And I found out about Andrew through a Freakonomics podcast. So I'm a little bit of a nerd, okay? So I'm always learning, researching, and I love reading, and I love finding out about these new things, and very, very interested in the economics, right? So I found out about Andrew Yang, went to visit him. And in fact, I knew about Andrew way before most of the United States had ever heard about him, right? And the reason is, I think it is an amazing thing that he's talking about UBI. I've been a huge proponent of it, and here's why. First of all, Andrew talks about automation, but in the long term, automation is not just going to be limited to factory automation or self-driving cars, but in fact, we as a community, as a humanity, as the world have this ability to automate a lot of things. And I'll give you a simple example. A lot of people that were working, back in the 70s, 80s, et cetera, didn't have a personal computer when they went to work, right? When personal computers entered our workforce, what happened? All of a sudden, we were able to accomplish a lot more work during, the 8 hours that we work than we were able to prior to that. So these technologies, as we put into the workplace, have what they've done is they've increased our productivity by hundreds of thousands of percent. So now corporations are creating value at a much faster and bigger rate than we can imagine. But yet, when you look at wages in our country, they have barely grown over the last, 5 decades. They've hardly grown at all. So productivity, the whole purpose of having corporations and having technology and innovation and increasing productivity is to me to ensure that we can live a life that's fulfilled, that we have this wonderful earth that we can discover. And as human beings, we have barely scratched the surface of the amazing things that are on earth. We should not be spending our life. We should not be living to work. We have to change this live to work culture. So that's my long-term vision on why I believe in UBI. I believe that we will be able to get to a point where robots and automation and the productivity will be so high that none of us will have to actually work for our basic needs. And here's the simple thing. We're not asking for 10 houses in 10 states or houses across the world. We are asking for something basic. When we talk about universal basic income, what we're saying is, look, we have enough wealth in this world to ensure every single person has the ability to survive comfortably, meaning they can put a roof over their heads, meaning that they are not suffering from hunger, that they have enough food to put on their table, that they have the ability to go see a doctor, and do preventative care. These are things that are, by the way, we are able to do today, right now. If anybody tells you that we don't have enough money to cover every single person in the United States, definitely, and not only that, but across the world, that we can provide that to every single person. That is why I am a big proponent of UBI, that this is a financially solvable problem for every single person. So that's what led me to be a big supporter. And it is part of my platform, Real Pay for All. And I'll just mention very quickly here, Real Pay for All is this concept that if you work full-time for a living, you should not only be able to pay for your basic needs, but you should be able to thrive, which means you should be able to save for the American dream of putting a down payment on a home, and you should be able to comfortably retire after working decades in the industry. And this is something that can be done, and it can be financially solved. And I like to say our campaign is bringing the financial solution for the things that we believe are the morally right thing to do.
Fantastic. That's a great answer, and I think you covered pretty much everything I want to know about your history with Andrew Yang and UBI. I'd like to ask next about something that we're actively working on, and we'll be glad. I was glad to hear that you'll be able to be popping into our event tomorrow, and that's ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is something that has a real potential to change elections for good, completely change how we campaign, and I want to know, what is your stance, and then what is your understanding of ranked choice voting?
Yeah, so many of you are very familiar with ranked choice voting, which is when you go into a voting booth, you not only vote for your first choice, but you also vote for your second choice. And so there are a couple of concepts around that, right? So a lot of people go into the voting booth and they say, you know what? I love Andrew. I think he would make a great president, right? But a lot of other people say, I love Andrew and I think he would make a great president, but I think as a first-time candidate, it may be very difficult for him to have the countrywide recognition and for people to actually get to know him. So they often don't choose or vote for the person that they really believe will do a great job for our country. And ranked choice voting allows us to have this ability to choose the person that will do the work for us, that will represent us. So I think this is an extremely important change in the right direction. I'm a huge proponent of ranked choice voting. And so what happens is after ranked choice voting occurs, it also prevents things like runoffs, by the way, because now what happens is the person on the bottom, the votes that have gone for them gets redistributed up and they fall out. And at the end of the day, you have a person that is now been elected, and it prevents things like the runoff that I'm in right now as well. So in both cases, I think ranked choice voting is transformational for having the right leadership, the right representation. And the third thing that ranked choice voting does, it gives this ability for first-time candidates like myself, who have never ran for office, to actually have a really good chance of being elected into office because of what we're running on, because of the work we're doing. People recognize the work we're doing. People recognize the platform. They're like, this is an amazing platform of what you're doing for our country, and it is important for people to have that voice. And if for some reason that they believe that it's we don't know if this person can actually make it, because you were, when we started out this conversation, you were talking about a lot of people that support, for example, the Andrew Yang platform, but they may not be polling very high, or they might not have recognition. It gives them this ability to have a better chance of getting exposure, of people finding out about them, and having a better chance at representation. So those are my ideas about ranked choice voting, and I think 100% is the right way to go going forward.
I think one fun thing to point out, something that you mentioned, as well as everyone who's thinking about voting should probably know, is under a ranked choice voting system, you would, this is a very selfish thing to say, but under a ranked choice voting system, you would have probably won in March, because all of the candidates who have dropped out of the primary race have already endorsed you.
Yes.
So you are a clear, the next thing I'd like to cover is, aside from UBI and ranked choice voting, what is your number one legislative priority once you're elected?
Yeah, so the biggest focus that we're putting on our platform is around healthcare. And, I talked a little bit about healthcare challenges that our entire country is facing. But I'll give you one example. When we started our campaign, I quit my job in very early 2019 in January. And what I did is I went around this district to talk to people to try to understand what their challenges were. We talked with any group that would talk with us: partisan, nonpartisan, political, non-political, business-oriented, non-business-oriented, moms groups, etc. And we tried to listen to them to try to understand what are the challenges they were facing. In one of these events, I just went walking downtown Round Rock, and I went into every single restaurant and shop that was on that strip. I went in and I talked to many of the servers in there that would talk to me, and almost every single restaurant server in these really amazing restaurants that we go out to celebrate our birthdays and anniversaries with told me that they have no healthcare coverage. And the main reason was, even with Obamacare, ACA, Affordable Care, the Affordable Care Act, I am unable to afford my premiums. That is the number one answer. The number two answer is, I'm able to pay my premiums. I have a catastrophic plan, right? My family helps me pay for it. However, my deductible is $10,000. My deductible is $8,000. So if I wanted to go see a primary care physician because I'm feeling sick today, that is going to cost me $300, $200. And I just don't have an extra $300. I'm a waitress. I don't have an extra $300 sitting in my bank account. So they're unable to see a doctor even when they have health insurance. So this is the story that I like to tell, which is very clear that our healthcare structure and system is completely broken. In 2018, our country spent $3.68 trillion in healthcare while leaving out over 80 million people from any kind of healthcare. Now, don't confuse health insurance with healthcare. Health insurance is not healthcare. So many of these people had health insurance, but absolutely no ability to go see a doctor. And that is completely unacceptable. Imagine that you are paying a monthly premium, even if it's $200, $300, every single month, only to get nothing when you're actually sick. How is that even logical? It doesn't make any sense to me. So obviously, I'm a huge advocate of single-payer healthcare or Medicare for all. And here's the reason why. We have over a dozen different agencies, think tanks, organizations that have spent millions of dollars researching healthcare in our country. And every single one of them, whether they are conservative, liberal, centrist, it doesn't matter where the money came from. They all say that we can cover every single person in the United States, all 327 million people, with just $2 to $3 trillion. Now, last I checked, $2 to $3 trillion is way less than $3.68 trillion. So there is no doubt in my mind, mathematically, financially, that we can afford single-payer healthcare for all. But my healthcare for all plan goes further. What I'm saying is this. Many Americans are not aware that we have a huge lack of primary care physicians in our country. We have no preventative focus on healthcare. If we focus on preventative care and ramp up the number of primary care physicians, nurses, and doctors at the primary care level and stop using the ER as our first line of defense, we will be able to drive down the cost of healthcare even more significantly, and we will be able to scale the healthcare infrastructure. And when I talk about scale the healthcare infrastructure, here's what I mean. I mean more ability to care for people at the preventative level, to be able to go see a doctor anytime so your healthcare challenges don't exacerbate to a point where now we're spending millions of dollars in a hospital or you're hospitalized instead of being able to take care of these health challenges early. And by the way, we saw this in the pandemic. We have over 120,000 families across our country that have had to bury a loved one in the past 3 months. And almost all of them couldn't even have a proper funeral. They weren't even able to say goodbye to their family members. They had to say bye over a phone in many cases. They couldn't even have a conversation. That's how tragic, that is how tragic our country has become in terms of pandemic. And the only reason that we're here today is that we have absolutely no focus on preventative care. Most of these people died because they had underlying health conditions, and they had these underlying health conditions because they had absolutely no ability to go see a doctor their entire lives. And this is why my healthcare plan for all goes a little bit further on Medicare for all. It focuses on lowering the cost of healthcare significantly, because if we don't lower the cost of healthcare, we're not going to solve our problems, number one. And number two, it scales the healthcare infrastructure. So it creates incentives and programs to accelerate the number of primary care physicians, nurses, and preventative facilities that people can go to. So these are the ways that we believe that we can solve healthcare, and we can do it fast and we can do it quickly. And we believe that healthcare for all will accelerate single payer Medicare for all.
Excellent. That's a great answer. All right. So I want to segue finally as we get kind of to like toward the tail end of this. I want to talk about your campaign, and I want to talk about your journey. And then we're going to end with some plugs, of course, for how we can support you and how we can make this happen.
Yes.
So one question I think about a lot for people like yourself, like, Andrew had an inflection point in his campaign, when he was known by a few people like yourself. And then certain things happened that allowed his campaign to snowball into, the worldwide movement that it is now. For your campaign, has it been a gradual rise from the moment you guys announced your candidacy, or was it was there a struggle and then an inflection point? Because I think anyone who's looking at the race now can tell you're doing really good right now, having made it into the runoff and having all these endorsements. So has it always been an upward trajectory for you, or was there an inflection point at any point in time during the campaign?
So this race started out with 12 people in the race. And then 6 people were on the ballot, but only 5 people were running. And absolutely no one thought that we would be here today going into this runoff in the strongest position possible. And over the time that we've engaged with voters, we have seen an increasing support and growth and acceleration. And the way we've seen this is very simple. Every single time we get our message to the voter, we win them over. And our trajectory to success has been all about contacting the voter and having this conversation. The most interesting thing about our campaign, Hexel, is that whenever we talk to a voter, you know what they tell us? I have never had a political candidate talk to me. I've never had someone call me. Many of my voters are like, so you're Donna Imam, so you're the candidate, right? You are the one who's running. And I have to be like, yeah, I'm the one who's running, because I call my voters. And very early on in our race, we started getting traction because I would go to these completely non-political events. Like there's a huge event going on and I would just buy a ticket and start shaking hands. And I'd be like, hey, I'm Donna Imam. I'm running for US Congress. Here's a little bit of information for me. And you know what people would say? I have never met any political candidate that would just come up and say hello to me and talk to me. So you're the candidate? And so this is how our campaign just blew up over time. And of course, we had these amazing opportunities, for example, to get on the Humanist Report, for example. When we first had that interview on the Humanist Report, we had hundreds of donations. Small donations. We had so many people write handwritten letters, 1- 2-page letters. We had a farmer out in the middle of New York saying, I have never seen a candidate that I've been so inspired by. I don't have a lot to give, but here's a small check for you. I want to see you represent us. We had people all over the country sending us checks. It was an unbelievable experience. So as soon as we can get our message in front of the voter, the donor, we win them over every single time. And that's how we've gotten here. And you're right, we've slowly grown, but it's been an exciting journey for us. And then when Andrew came in and Humanity Forward endorsed our campaign, it was just the right kind of partnership, I remember the one thing that Andrew said on the phone to me, he's like, wow, you're just yang gang all over. You're just like, everything about you is about our campaign. We need candidates like you. And it was just an amazing experience. So this campaign has just been on this upward asymptotical journey. And we hope that we're gonna win this runoff, flip this district blue, bring the biggest voice for working people in the United States, and give UBI a platform that it never imagined. So we're super excited. And of course, we need your help. Instead of plugging our campaign, look, here's the thing. The reality is we are right now in the middle of early voting. 4 days of early voting have already happened. 13,000 people have voted. So in the 2018 runoff, the total number of votes was around 14,000. But in this runoff, 13,000 people in this district have already voted. Now we have 6 more days of early voting left. Starts on July 5th, which is tomorrow, goes through July 10th, and then election day is July 14th. Humanity Forward, Humanity First, we need you. We need to pick up the phone and let voters know that they have a choice in representation. And if we can talk to enough voters in the next several days, we can win this. We can win this all the way. This is a doable campaign where, as Hexel pointed out, endorsed by all of the primary candidates, not 1, not 2, but all 3 primary candidates have endorsed our campaign because they believe in what we're doing. They believe in the work that we're putting in. And I've always been a big believer that if you take your message to the voter, that they're going to recognize what you're trying to do. Because at the end of the day, people can see what's inside your heart. They can see what you're trying to accomplish for them. And that's how our campaign has been successful. So help us out. Come phone bank for us. And if you can give, donate, because every single dollar will be used for direct voter contact. And I want to give you just one figure that I know that all these math folks out there are going to love. Most campaigns spend somewhere between $14 and $15 to reach each voter. Our campaign, because of our intense focus on leveraging volunteers and using their skills in the right place, we are able to reach voters for just $1. So that's how effective we've been with our grassroots funding and being able to maximize on it. And this quarter, we had the biggest quarter ever. And this month of June, we had the biggest month of fundraising ever. So we are going into this in a very strong position. We can do this. We need your help and support. Every single dollar counts. And I look at every single dollar as dollars that came from my friends. So we really pay attention to our finances and how we're utilizing it in a very focused manner. So if you do contribute to our campaign, you know that someone's really watching how effective and how efficiently it's being used.
Excellent. All right. And that's really great because I feel like that covers our soundbite for how to support the campaign. One last question. I think this question is, I'm trying to grab things that will catch people's ear, catch people's eye on social media, right? So the last thing I want to ask you is, could you elaborate on your phone call with Andrew Yang and what it was like talking to him about your campaign and getting his endorsement over the phone?
Yeah, so it was a great experience. But as you know, Andrew is an extremely down-to-earth person. So when he was in Austin, he and I had a conversation at the very end of his event. In fact, when his entire event cleared out, there was probably Andrew, few of his staff, one journalist, and me. And so we had a really good conversation. And I believe Andrew remembered that conversation. And I sent him a photograph of us, which everyone's seen now. But when he called, he was like, yeah, I remember having a conversation with you. Because I was like, Andrew, you probably don't remember, but we had this conversation when you were Austin. He was like, nope, I remember. I saw the photograph. I completely remember. And to be honest, you know, Andrew asked me just a little bit about our campaign and what we were doing. But he had done a lot of research. He had already looked into our campaign and he was excited. He was excited about endorsing our campaign. It was actually a pretty short conversation. His conversation was, tell me what you guys are doing to win this. And he was excited about coming together. And the other thing that Andrew's been doing, I don't know if you guys have noticed, is that whenever I have been tweeting, he's been so supportive. He's been retweeting us over and over, keeping our campaign on the minds of people. And you see a lot of people that maybe endorse campaigns and that's it. But Andrew has, over the past several days, been continually promoting us and helping us get the attention of people. And what more could you ask for? And this is the same thing that we see in our campaign from our endorsers like Tammy Young, who's the Round Rock City Councilwoman who was in the primary with me, right? She didn't just endorse. She has been calling voters. She has been recording voicemails so that we can actually connect with the voter. She is part of our literature. She wrote a statement for our campaign. She calls me on a weekly basis and says, Donna, what can I do for you? You've got to win this. We need you in office. Dan Janjikan, who called voters around this district saying, hey, I'm Dan, I'm supporting Donna. If you voted for me, make sure you vote for Donna. Eric Hankey, who went out of his way to get a yard sign because he's like, I am connected with every single one of my neighbors and I want them to know that I am supporting you, and emailed out to 600 people in district telling them, hey, you guys supported me in the primary, but now we need to get behind Donna. So these endorsements like Andrew and these other people are not just voices that are there on our website. These people are actively working for us. This race and this campaign is your voice. It's your campaign. This is not about me. This is not just about my message. This is about people in this district wanting change. And I see this from Andrew, and he's given us this national platform to get our campaign out there. And I'm so excited about having the whole Humanity For team with us. And so that's kind of how our conversation went, and we're here today.
Well, fantastic. Well, that's really exciting. So everyone at home, please check out her website, votefordonna.com. I know I'm talking to a lot of people from across the state of Texas. So if you don't live in Williamson County or Bell County, then the number one thing you can do is phone bank, phone bank, phone bank. Gotta get those calls in. Gotta let the people know. Donna Imam, right?
Yep, Donna Imam for U.S. Congress. And by the way, even if you don't live here, you might have family here. You might have friends that live in Round Rock, Leander, Cedar Park, Killeen, Temple. Please call them. Please text them. Even if you didn't vote in the primary, you can vote in the runoff.
That's right. And so make sure that you talk to your friends and family and neighbors and former classmates, whoever you can think of that lives in the district. Make sure you get them to vote for Donna. And if you don't live there, then we need as many people on the phones as possible. This is an all hands on deck because we need her to win. So, all right, Donna. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy campaign schedule to talk with me about your campaign, about yourself, about this race. And I'll just let you have the final word. Is there anything last you want to say to Humanity For Texas?
When I drive around Bell County, this was in 2019, I would see Andrew Yang yard signs. So if you don't believe that Humanity For has a future in our country, believe it. Believe it. Out in rural parts of Texas, I've seen them myself, and I've knocked on those doors. This was way before Andrew endorsed our campaign. So I know that people in the United States are on board with this platform. They are hopeful, and we can get this done. So help us win this runoff. We really, really need you. If we contact voters, we can win.